common piece of advice I give is when you're working on side projects, just use what you know, right? So, um, you have to have reasonable goals as far as like being able to launch something. So it's like the obvious way to do that is to use the technologies that you know, right? You're going to be able to build something the fastest that way. But at the same time, there are consequences to the tech stack that you choose. So um, I don't know if I don't know if I would call this a mistake necessarily, but kind of like we were just discussing. I've had issues with the choices that I made. So it's made it harder it was easy to get going, but it's made it harder to add new features and evolve and that type of thing. So it's like, try to find a good balance between, I know this technology and also it is a good fit, which is not easy always to do, especially if you're not as familiar with, the technologies that you're working with, which like at my career 5 years ago, I knew much less than I know now. So, um, you know, that's really the biggest hiccup I've had is just the technology choices I've made and paying for those over time.
Yeah, and I guess that with everything coming, yeah, I mean, there is always a new framework, there is always a new fancy tool to learn, and you're always, I mean, I always am tempted when I'm starting a new project. I'm always tempted to, oh, I'm gonna build it with Tailwind CSS, and I'm gonna build it with Firebase because I don't know Firebase, and everybody thinks or speaks good things about it. And at the end, you spend so much time going through the documentation instead of actually building uh, the project itself.
Yeah, and I've been talking about doing a rewrite of this for several years, and I could just never justify it. Right? It's like it's working fine. It's not costing me a lot of money to run. So it's like, how do I justify starting over from scratch? But it's like the things add up over the years, and it's like, now that some of my core data sources are changing, it was finally the last straw where it's like, okay, now this is old enough. It makes sense to invest some time in this and do it
And,
again.
and basically now you are actually familiar with these new technologies that you're going to use. So it's not like you're going to spend like most of your time again going through the documentation. You are basically ready to take the
Yeah, and hopefully, same idea still. It's like I'm using what I know, but also what I think is appropriate now. So, for example, MongoDB, I'm sure I could make it work with that, but I think it's gonna work better with a relational database, for example. So, it's the right balance of, and I'm not a Postgres expert either, so it'll
yeah.
be interesting. But finding a good balance of what you know and what is a good fit.